that's a little bit of a tune called Enrico, and it was the favourite tune of the great novelist Thomas Hardy. As well as being a novelist, an architect, he was also a fiddle player. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about Thomas Hardy. I'm going to talk about two local novelists. I've never met either of them, but they live quite close by, and they're both writers I love. And it's that question of how much difference does it make that they're writing about an area you know well. It seems to help and makes a book more interesting. The first of these I'll talk about is Kate Atkinson, who's very highly regarded. She does write detective fiction, and she also writes more literary works, often set in the Second World War. But I thought I'd talk mainly about the detective ones. This is one of her literary works, Life After Life. But then this is one of her detective stories. Started early, took my dog. I first came across her. I just picked it up and realised she was talking about an area I know very well, which I live on the edge of Leeds. She's from York. I've never met her or anything, but she does set her stories in this area quite often. This one, it opens in it's got a little bit run down shopping area now, just to the north of the centre of Leeds, called the Merrion Centre. It used to be quite well to do, but it's deteriorated a little bit, I think. And there's a detective inspector who's just left her job, and she's a bit depressed, and she's become the head of security in the Merrion Centre, and she's called Tracy, and she wanders in. That she sees she hears a child crying, so she wanders in to see what's up, and she recognises the mother. Oh yeah, Kelly Cross. Kelly Cross was the reason for the screaming child. No surprise there. Kelly Cross, prostitute, druggie, thief, all-round pikey, a scrag end of a woman. Tracy knew her. Everyone knew her. Kelly had several kids, most of them in care, and they were the lucky ones. So yeah, this Tracy's having a bit of a breakdown in some ways. She goes along anyway. She suddenly goes up to this Kelly and says, "How much?" "How much what?" "How much for the kid?" Tracy said, delving into her handbag and unearthing one of the envelopes that contained money. Janek's money, that's something else. Anyway, she said, £3,000. And Kelly just says, "Ta very much," and jumps on a bus. Well, Kelly stood on the platform fumbling for change. Tracy raised her voice and said, "What's her name?" Kelly pulled her ticket out of the machine and said, "Courtney." Courtney, typical chav name. Chantel, Shannon, Tiffany, Courtney. "Yeah, Courtney." Then she gave her a puzzled look as if Tracy was a polo short of a packet. Started to say something, "But she's not." But the bus doors closed on her words. And so she she ends up with this, she's got this child now. And then the next chapter is the sort of, the kind of hero is called Brody, Jackson Brody. He's a sort of private investigator. He's a bit of a wild card, really, I suppose, as well. So this is him talking now. He thought of Leeds as a place where it always rained, but the weather today was perfect. Roundhay Park full of people. He came across an unexpected picture of happiness. A dog, a small, scruffy one, was racing around the park. So he's enjoying watching this dog, and then it seemed as if the dog didn't belong to anyone. But then a man lumbered up, bearing down on the dog, barking orders at it. You... I won't read that out. He was a big guy with a mean expression on his face, barrel-chested like a Rottweiler. Add to that the shaved head, the weightlifting muscles, and a St. George's flag tattooed on his left bicep. The dog was wearing a collar, but instead of a lead, the man was carrying a rope, thin, like washing line. Gonna put you down, should have done it the minute that bitch left. Dogs and mad Englishmen out in the midday sun. A commotion was growing. Agitated people protesting loudly at the man's behaviour. A woman's voice rose shrilly above the others. I'm calling the police. And the man snarled, mind your own effing business. So this is Jackson Brodie. Cruel and unusual punishment, he thought. He had been around violence in one form or another all his life. Not always on the receiving end of it, but you had to draw the line somewhere. A small helpless dog seemed like a good place to draw that line. He followed the man out of the park. The man's car was parked nearby, and he opened the boot and plucked up the dog and flung it inside, where it cowered, shivering and whimpering. You just wait, you little bastard, the man said. He already had his mobile phone open, holding it to one ear as he raised a warning finger to the dog in case it made a move to escape. Hey babe, it's Colin, he said, his voice turning oily, a cage-fighting Romeo. He frowned, imagining what would happen to the dog when the man got it home. Colin. It seemed unlikely it would be good. He stepped forward, tapped Colin on the shoulder and said, excuse me. When Testosterone Man turned round, he said, on guard. What the F are you talking about? Colin said. And he said, I'm being ironic, and delivered a vicious and satisfying uppercut to Colin's diaphragm. Now that he was no longer subject to institutional rules governing brutality, he felt free to hit people at will. This is Jackson Brodie. He might have been around violence all his life, but it was only recently that he was beginning to see the point of it. It used to be that his bark was worse than his bite, but now it was the other way round. His philosophy where fighting was concerned was to keep clear of anything fancy. One good, well-placed blow was usually enough to lay a man down. The punch was driven by a flash of black anger. There were days when he knew who he was. He was his father's son. Right enough, Colin's legs went from under him and he dropped to the ground, making a face like a suffocating fish. Strange squeaking, squealing noises came from his lungs as he fought for breath. He squatted down next to Colin and said, do that to anyone or anything again, man, woman, child, dog, even a tree, and you're dead, and you'll never know whether or not I'm watching you. Understand? The man nodded in acknowledgement, even though he still hadn't managed to catch a breath, looking in fact like he might never take another one. Bullies were always cowards at heart. His phone had clattered to the pavement and he could hear a woman's voice saying, Colin! Cole, are you still there? He stood up and stepped on the phone, ground it into the pavement. Unnecessary and ridiculous, but somehow satisfying. So then, of course, he takes the dog. So that's nice. That's nice. You know, the two of them are both acquired companions in that way. And you know, that bit of violence, it's always somehow enjoyable. And we know we shouldn't, but we do. We enjoy seeing someone who obviously deserves it getting comeuppance. And that's common in a lot of these kind of stories, particularly in Lee Child. All Lee Child is trying to satisfy these unsatisfied urges for justice. And in real life, of course, justice is not always satisfied. So that's Kate Atkinson. And as I say, the more literary novels of hers are often set around the time of the Second World War. She's done quite a few looking into that. And, so many novels about the Second World War. In that Life After Life, it's a beautiful book, but there's bits of it that are quite harrowing. When she's describing the Blitz, what it was really like in the Blitz, trying to get a sense of that. Of course, it's been mythologized now as if the happy Londoners were partying all the time as 1,000-pound bombs rained down, whereas the reality was it was terrifying. And anyway, Kate Atkinson, she's never written anything I haven't wanted to read. It's one of those writers that everything she does seems to me worthwhile. This is the last one I read, Death at the Sign of the Rook. That's another Jackson Brodie one. That's the right. As I say, I've never met her or anything like that. Although she lives in York, she's not too far away. And 2025 this came out. So lovely. And the other writer that I particularly enjoy is Peter Robinson, who his are all detective stories. He's written about 20 or so, I think. I've read about 10 of them. And I just came across him by accident. I'm sure that people who specialise in reading detective stories know him well. But they're set in North Yorkshire, a fictional town, but it's somewhere like Thirsk or Northallerton. And then the action often moves to places that you do know, like Skipton, which I'm from Skipton, or Whitby, and places like that. And he describes the area very well, because I think he lives in Canada now, I think. Again, I've never met him or anything like that. I don't know anything about him really. But these two writers are people whose novels I have to kind of ration, really, because I enjoy them so much. I could just read them and nothing else. And I like to vary my reading. And I think that the fact that there's this local relevance enhances them for me, because I do know the areas very well. I think if you don't know the areas, people would still enjoy these two. So I don't know if everybody knows these writers. I'm sure you do, a lot better than me. But I'm very sparing in reading detective fiction rather. But Peter Robinson, they're police ones. Small police station, as I say, in this fictional town. His hero is called Detective Inspector Alan Banks. He's a little bit unconventional, and of course that's a common theme in these stories, where the superior is a man who goes by the board and is always telling the detective off, and the detective always gets the results, and the chief constable is always in hock to the the Mr. Biggs and all that. It's predictable anyway, but I think that's why they're enjoyable, isn't it? It's because we know the format. We don't want massive surprises where the hero turns out to be the villain or anything like that. No, we don't want that. We want what we expect, and there's something satisfying in that. Peter Robinson's are very well plotted. He's not as literary as Kate Atkinson. You don't admire the writing. It's all right. But there's nothing special about it. You don't say, oh wow, I'd love that passage there. So I don't feel inclined to read any out. Whereas reading out Kate Atkinson. Not only is it funny, but it's very, imagine this guy talking about suffocating fish, because he's been punched. It's just evocative and original and clever. Yeah, I sometimes feel I wouldn't want to read only detective. It's fantasy, isn't it? Some more fantasy than others. Lee Child is pure fantasy. It's pure escapism. You're never going to get reality like that. You're never going to get a person like that, like Reacher, But they're very enjoyable. I just sometimes feel, I know I'm enjoying it, but I know I'm wasting my time as well. But they are great, aren't they? So I'll finish this off. I'll make it a bit shorter. I don't want to give the impression that all I read is things like Chaucer, because it isn't. Right, my parrot has decided to shout for his tea, so it's a good time to stop. But that was a tune called The Princess Royal. Very old English tune. Thanks very much. Booktubers everywhere and parrots.